A block of mass 12.0 kilogram is sliding at an initial velocity of 8.00 meters per second in the positive x direction. Again, there is an indication of the direction, positive x, so that means to the right. The surface has a coefficient of kinetic friction of 0.300. Letter A, what is the force of kinetic friction? And letter B, what is the Black's acceleration? And letter C, how far will it slide before coming to rest? So there is no illustration, so we will draw first the problem. Meron tayong, is it horizontal? Yes, this is a horizontal surface. Kasi walang nakabigay na description na it is inclined. So horizontal yan. Horizontal surface. Sir, bakit horizontal surface ang laging example mo? Kasi madali lang. Sir, magbibigay ka ng example na naka-incline? Yes, kagaya nung sa first law. So there is a block na lying on a rough horizontal surface. So let us identify first all the forces acting on the block. Sige dabi, kung kabalo na ba mo mag-identify og forces acting on the block? May
Frictional force. Pag-rough ang surface.
pag-rough ang surface at saka take note kapag may makita ka na coefficient of friction. Okay, take note of the word ha. Yan yung keyword natin. So there is a mention of coefficient of friction. So that means there is a frictional force. Now, anong direction ng frictional force natin? It is in the opposite direction of the motion. So ang motion natin is to the positive x, to the right. So that means our frictional force is to the left. Frictional force. Okay, another force.
Gravitational force.
Gravitational force or the weight, which is directed to the downwards.
Negative y.
Ayan. So gravity, negative y. Very good. Negative y or downward. So that is gravitational force or the weight of our object. Next, ano pa yung force present dito sa problem natin?
Normal force po, sir. Is equal to
Normal force. Bakit mayroon tayong normal force?
kasi horizontal po siya, sir.
Kasi mayroong
Surface.
very good. Kapag mayroong surface, then that means you have a normal force. Normal force. The question is, meron ba tayong applied force dito? Remember, applied force, the definition of applied force, it is an external force. So basahin natin sa problem kung meron ba tayong external force. A block of mass, so nag-slide daw siya, mayroong velocity that is not external. The surface has a coefficient of kinetic. What is the force of kinetic? What is the block's acceleration? How far? There is no mention of an external force applied. Tama? Walang external force naka-mention sa problem. So, ibig sabihin, there is no applied force in the problem. Kasi wala namang naka-mention na applied force. Nakuha. Wala siya sa problem. So, wag mo siyang ilagay sa free body diagram natin. Okay, so let us identify all the given variables or all the given values. Una, we have mass, and mass is equal to 12.0 kilograms. So kapag may mass, automatically solve for the weight para hindi ka malito. So that is 12.0 times 9.81. That is 117.72 Newton. 3 significant figures, hanggang dito lang. Okay? Ano pa yung given natin? At an initial velocity of 8.00 meters per second, that is our initial velocity, 8.00 meters per second. The surface has a coefficient of kinetic friction. Coefficient of kinetic friction is 0.300. What is the force? What is the force of kinetic friction on the block? What is the block's acceleration? How far will it slide before coming to rest? So mag-rest siya at after some time. Naman sa problem. So after some time, maabot diri ato ang block. Yan, muna daw niya itong block. After some time. So it will come to rest. So that means our final velocity is 0 meters per second because it comes to rest. Mag-rest siya dito. 0 meters per second. Okay? So let us identify what are the required variables. Una, for letter A, what is the kinetic friction? So that is force due to friction, the frictional force. And that is kinetic. Take note, it is kinetic because it is moving. For letter B, what is the block's acceleration? So acceleration, saan siya mag-accelerate? Along the Y or along the X? Of course, mag-accelerate siya along the X. Kasi ang movement niya, left or right lang man na siya. Hindi man siya mag-move up or down. So it is acceleration along the X. Now for letter C, how far will it slide before coming to rest? How far daw? That is the displacement. Tama? So displacement along the X. Questions? None? Okay, let's proceed. For letter A, ang hinahanap natin is the frictional force. And for frictional force, we know the equation which is mu k Fn. Tama? Mu k Fn. Now, what is our Fn? Hello, sir, wala lagi ni Fn sa given. Remember, if it is a horizontal surface, our Fn is just equal to the weight. Again, take note, horizontal. Horizontal mo lang ano natin, problem. So we can just substitute all the given variables. Our mu k is 0.300. Our Fn, which is equal to the weight, and that is 117.72 Newton. And that will give us what? That will give us 35. 35? Oh, 35. 35.316 Newton. How many significant figures ang kailangan natin? We only need 3 significant figures. So our frictional force is just equal to 35.3 Newton. Questions? Okay na no? Dali na kayo no? Okay, let's proceed sa letter B. For letter B, ang hinahanap natin is the acceleration along the X. Now, ano yung gagamitin natin na equation not dito? Is it first law or second law of motion? May I ask? Liana. Liana, are you there?
Sir,
Anong gagamitin natin na equation? First law or second law?
wait lang, sir.
Ha?
No, sir, second law.
Bakit second law, Liana?
Since, wait lang, sir. Kasi mag-move siya, sir. Wala, oh, sir. Dili, wala ko first.
Unsa man sa
Wait
tinood,
lang,
Liana?
sir, dalibog na ko, sir. Naamang yung acceleration, sir, so, move
Very good.
siya.
So kapag may acceleration,
Second law siya,
first
sir.
law,
kaya
second law.
mag-move man siya,
Yun.
sir.
Very good. So
Second
second
law.
law of motion. Okay. So kapag acceleration yan, second law automatically. Mass times acceleration. This x, take note x yan oh. So lagyan natin ng x, it should also be x. So hahanapin natin ngayon what are the forces along the x. Ano ba yung forces along the x? Tingnan mo lang si free body diagram. Saan dyan yung horizontal? Ano dito ang horizontal? Hala, FF lang. Nag-inusara lang si FF sa horizontal. So, FF lang, which is negative. Kaya it is to the left. Sir, siya lang lagi isa. O, ayaw ka problema. Siya lang isa. Siya lang isa atong isalat. So, negative FF must be equal to, excuse me, mass times the acceleration. Okay, so ganun lang. Yun lang kasi yung given. So, wag na mag-overanalyze. Hahanapin natin is the acceleration. So, divide both sides by mass. Divide both sides by mass. Cancel, cancel. And that gives us acceleration is negative FF. Ano yung FF natin? 35. Negative 35.3 Newton divided by the mass. Ano yung mass? Asa itong mass? Ito na 12. 12.0 kilograms. And that will give us what? 35.3 divided by 12.0. And that will give us 2.941 and so on meters per second squared. But we need how many significant figures? We only need 2 significant figures. Don't forget the number of significant figures. So acceleration is equal to negative yan, negative 2.9 meters per seconds. So lagyan ko ng negative ha. Lang. Now the question is, what is the meaning of a negative acceleration? Kasi maka-remember ba? Ano sa meaning sa negative acceleration?
Downwards, ay ka lang. Sir.
Very good. Naga-decelerate. So naga-decelerate siya. So that means naga-slow down. That is why after some time it will come to rest. Tama? Naga-slow down. It is decelerating. So for letter C, ang hinahanap natin sa letter C is how far will it go? So that is displacement. So again, babalik tayo doon sa equations natin, kinematics. VF minus VI over time. We cannot use this equation, of course, because kailangan natin si D. How about 2AD is equal to VF minus VI squared? Given ba? Check muna natin. We have acceleration, yes. Do we have final velocity? Meron ba tayong final velocity? Yes, check. Meron ba tayong initial velocity? Yes, check. So that means we can use this equation. No? Ayun, naka-problema. Everything is given. So that means for the displacement, we will use 2AD is equal to VF squared minus VI squared. Okay, so that would mean since our final velocity is 0, so this term can be disregarded kasi mag-0 din yan. Okay? So ang kailangan natin is displacement, so just divide both sides by 2a. Divide both sides by 2a. So displacement is equal to negative, what is our VI? Our VI is 8.00 meters per second squared divided by what is our acceleration? Our acceleration is negative 2.9. Sir, yung rounded off na ang isulat natin, hindi yung magdadagdag tayo ng extra. It's up to you. Pareho lang yan ang sagot later. Per second squared. As long as you follow the rules of significant figures. So 8 squared divided by 2 divided by 2.9. Dahil lagi ang answer na ko ani ganina. Ila din 8 squared 64 divided by 2 divided by 2.9. 11 point. Lagi akong ma-remember nga answer na ko
Pwede
ganina.
mag-ask, sir. Sa significant figures po sa
Yes.
acceleration, sir, bakit 2 significant figures?
Thank you. Kaya pala, tingnan ko anong mali man ako ang answer. Thank you for that. Kisa to nag-clarify. Bato na natingnan ko anong lahi ang answer. Si Mary de. Thank you, Mary. Namali ko sa number of significant figures. It should contain how many significant figures?
3 significant figures, sir.
Very good. Thank you, Mary. It should contain 3 significant figures. Banto na tingnan ko anong layo man kayo. So dapat 3 significant figures pala. So kulang tayo ng significant figures. Mali magani si Sir Unsa na lang ni. Mali magita tanan. Ang importante ma-learn ta sa mga mistakes. So 2.94 dapat ni 2.94. 2.94 meters per second squared. So 8 squared divided by 2 divided by 2.94. And that will give us ganito gura. Kung anong lahi man ang number of significant figures. You can actually know if your answer is wrong or correct if you will follow the rules of significant figures. So it will give us 10.88 and so on meters. Remember the number of significant figures, we only need 3 significant figures. So this should be 10.9 meters.